I'm a One Piece fan, and I personally think Crocodile vs. Gaara would not even be close. Crocodile is stronger, faster, and than Logia, therefore he can't hit him. Even if you found out about his weakness, it'd still be hard, because he'll just one touch from Crocodile and all his water's gone, leaving him to dust and ash.
Hey, how's it going everyone? Today I have a versus battle that has been constantly requested by both my viewers and channel members, and I for one can't call myself a man of the people if I don't give them what they want. Before we begin, I'd like to plug my Discord server, which you can join by becoming a channel member or by supporting my Ko-Fi. If you want to talk to people about how powerful your favorite verses are, then you may want to consider joining. We promote healthy scaling and discourse. Now with that being said, let's talk about Crocodile.
Now I hope they don't do the... But this EON, therefore I don't think he'll be doing the power systems equalize,
versus
right?
Gaara, the Sandy Boys. This is a fight that at first glance you might think is simple, but like Gojo versus the 5 Kage, it boils down to how one thinks a specific interaction will go down. Unlike many of my other videos, I'll be splitting up this encounter into 2 separate parts. Alabasta Crocodile versus Pre-Time Skip Gaara, and Marineford Crocodile versus War Arc Gaara.
Okay.
I believe that the result of the fight changes depending on what versions of both of these characters you're using, and since I've never scaled Part 1 Naruto, it gave me the perfect opportunity to read through the earlier portion of the series. As always, there won't be any verse equalization, so with all that out of the way, let's begin. Before we even start with any scaling, I want to set up some parameters for the fight. For the sake of keeping the video as short and sweet as possible, we're going to say that Gaara's personal sand and Crocodile's body are entirely uncontrollable by the opposite party. I'm not...
Yeah, because it's not chakra sand, right? It's not the same sand that is made of chakra, I'm assuming. I don't know how Gaara abilities work, but I do know he controls sand, and there's a lot of chakra, so I'm thinking chakra sand, I'm not sure, but if that's the case, then it shouldn't affect Crocodile at all, right? Because he's actual sand, not made of chakra or anything, and he's a Logia, so...
I'm not gonna try and debate anyone on whether or not Gaara can manipulate Crocodile, or Crocodile can manipulate Gaara's personal sand.
Yeah, that's fair, that's fair.
Crocodile is living sand, and Gaara's sand has his mother's spirit possessing it, so I'd rather not even consider the potential headache of trying to figure out who would control who through some mental gymnastics and headcanon. After all, neither series holds a precedent for how this interaction can go down. The location shouldn't matter, though I imagine most people would assume they're battling in a desert.
Yeah,
I won't really be factoring the environment for the fight, but if you ask me, Gaara definitely benefits more from fighting in a desert than Croco Boy, and I'll explain why I think this is a case in better detail later. Also, I won't be going into detail about Gaara's AP because it genuinely doesn't matter. The simple truth is he can't hurt Crocodile. Yeah. If you look at Gaara's nature transformations, he doesn't have water style, so there's no way for him to deal damage to Crocodile.
Yeah, no weak. This is crazy. He can't even hurt him at this point, unless he just uses his blood against him like Luffy did, or he spits on his hand, which is gross. So
you put these two in an environment that has nearby accessible water, I don't think Gaara will ever find a way to damage Croc, unless you think he can somehow figure out Croc's weakness and or force himself to bleed enough that he can actually make contact.
Like this one.
I'm sure some of you are gonna say chakra is made up of half spiritual / mental energy, so it can probably damage Crocodile via his soul.
But it's non-verse equalization.
To that I say, no, that is not happening, and unless you can prove every jutsu Gaara has also damages the soul on contact, I'm not even going to entertain this as a possibility. Anyway, with all that being said, let's move on with the scaling. Trying to figure out Part 1 Gaara's speed is interesting because there are quite a few statements by the time of the tuning exams that imply the genin are anywhere around the transonic to hypersonic speed tiers. While combating the Sound Shinobi, Dozu, and Saku, Rock Lee could blitz Dozu by activating the first gate of opening, which allows the body to use 100% of its muscular energy, whereas usually the body can only use 20%. This would obviously imply, at the very least, a 5x amp, as he was about to pile drive Dozu into the ground with the primary Lotus. Zaku performed multiple hand signs and used sound waves as he was coming down to blast air into the ground, which cushioned the impact. if you think that the primary Lotus is as fast as Lee while he's moving on the ground, then that would make the attack either relative or slower than the speed of sound, since Dozu later says their attacks are supersonic, which could be anywhere between Mach 1.1 to Mach 5. I personally think Lee is faster than the falling speed of the primary Lotus, so we can say that with his weights on, he's at least Mach 1. I think this is a decent baseline to go with because Sasuke with the curse mark was capable of blitzing Zaku entirely on 2 separate occasions, one of which Zaku used another supersonic attack to try and hit him. Now by the time Lee fights Gaara, none of his attacks can land until he removes his weights. I can't tell you how much
he did the Goku thing. He did the Goku thing. I can't speak. But he did do the Goku thing where he's wearing weights in the tournament, and then he just takes him off to be serious. Again, like Goku did with Tien.
Mr. Lee moves without his weights, but in my opinion, he seems to move about as fast as when he's performing the primary Lotus, since he always disappears right before the starting kick, which could mean removing his weights makes him 5 times faster, or Mach 5, which is supersonic. The thing is, he doesn't seem to be any faster when he unlocks the first gate and hits Gaara. Either way, I'll give him the fairest interpretation possible, which should be at the very least a speed of Mach 25 or hypersonic, which seems to be fast enough to easily bypass the sand shield at this point in the story. By the time the Chunin exams reach their climax and Sasuke fights Gaara, he reveals that he was capable.
Mind you, these were children, right? That's crazy. Children were boxing this early on. That speed. That is
of replicating Lee's speed within a month, although Guy did say he's almost as fast as Lee's average speed, which means we can say Sasuke is also in that supersonic tier of about Mach 1.1 to Mach 5. Gaara's sand is consistently outmatched by these speeds. However, the reason why I'm going into this earlier scaling is to get a baseline for how fast one would need to be in order to outpace it, especially since Gaara has a habit of not really moving, so his own speed is technically irrelevant.
He relies on hacks, right? Not really any physical stats, if I'm mistaken.
I could also talk about Sasuke's Chidori or Gaara's Tailed Beast Cloak transformation, but Gaara's AP doesn't matter, and the version that's fighting Crocodile would be the one that fought Kimimaru. So I don't think Gaara would necessarily resort to using Shikaku's power, although again, I will talk about this later. One thing I do want to talk about in relation to his Tailed Beast Cloak.
Throughout the story, be it the anime or manga, we never get a definitive multiplier for any of the Tailed Beast Cloaks. There are a few ways to discern the possible multiplayer, but they involve using the curse mark version 2 or like one of which case they multiplier.
Is that if I give Gaara the fairest interpretation possible for the cloak, it's possibly a 10 times amp. There isn't any canon multiplier for this transformation, but if it's the equivalent of Naruto's one-tailed cloak, then one could argue it's at the very least a 10 times amp, like the cursed mark version 2 transformations. Under the assumption that the sand is at the very least as fast as Gaara, and it's on the lower end of supersonic, this would make Gaara's one-tailed form anywhere between Mach 11 to Mach 50 or hypersonic to high hypersonic. Naruto does fight this version of Gaara, but besides an off-guard kick, Gaara can consistently keep up with most of Naruto's assaults until he gets tagged with an explosive kunai, which damages him to the point Naruto can jump him with his multi-shadow clone jutsu.
Okay, this looks unfair. Poison him and then decide to jump him with hundreds of versions of you. Yeah.
There also isn't a lot to...
Bro, I haven't watched Naruto, and seeing that manga panel just looks so unfair. It's literally just diabolical.
Go off of for how much faster Naruto could have potentially gotten in the following arc. Most of his training is in regards to mastering the Rasengan. When he fights Sasuke, who's fresh out of the hospital, they seem to be relative in speed, and the pair still gets blitzed by Kakashi, who is at the very least massively hypersonic due to his lightning cutting feat when he was younger. Also, no, Sasuke is not lightning speed because he performed Chidori. There is no way...
Yeah, I don't think you would be lightning speed just because you have an attack that's lightning. Because it'll be like me if I fought you with a taser gun. Would that make me lightning speed? Hell no. you'd have to be moving the same speed as lightning would be to actually be considered lightning speed, or at the very least be very close to that speed in terms of combat, right? So it's really the same thing as like holding a taser gun and calling yourself lightning speed.
To bridge his speed to a 15 to 16-year-old Kakashi who was already a Jonin and an Anbu for several
I beat the logic by the claim clones again.
years. By the time of the Sasuke retrieval arc, the Sound 4 fought 2 Jonin and were forced to use their version 2 cursed marks in order to beat them. The Jonin were coming back from a mission, so they were out of chakra, but either way those 2 Jonin have no feats, so it doesn't matter. It's difficult to determine just how fast these characters should be by this point in the story due to a lack of quantifiable statements.
The amount of disrespect he's holding him is crazy. I would not let that slide, bro.
And feats, but by the time the Sand Trio join the fight, Tamari fights Tayuya, who uses sound-based genjutsu. Under the assumption that Tayuya's sound attacks scale up in speed due to the version
sound-based genjutsu? I did not know that. That's your lie.
to Cursed Mark, and under the assumption her attacks were at least as fast as Dozu and Zaku's supersonic sound waves. This would make her genjutsu about Mach 50 at the higher
Mach 50? That's like really fast. That's like really fast.
interpretations, and Tamari could react to and blow away this sound
Man,
with
these children are crazy.
her fan. Assuming that Gaara also got stronger since we last saw him, his sand should be within this tier of speed since he could fight
Okay.
CM2 Kimimaru. Now, this is a higher interpretation, and Gaara does mention that Lee isn't as fast or as sharp as when they last fought, which would contradict this since Lee has been in the hospital for about 2 months. Kimimaru doesn't ever blitz the sand, and when he's using CM2, he mostly overpowers it, so depending on how one chooses to interpret the growth of these characters within the 2 months since the preliminary fights of the Chunin exams, they could be anywhere between Mach 5 to Mach 50, but I'll give them Mach 50 for the sake of fairness. Moving
Okay.
on to Alabasta Crocodile,
Here we go. Here we go.
have to take some liberties with his
Alabasta has virtually zero speed statements or feats that can be easily quantified after using from previous and later arcs in order to get possible pop art. Okay, I mean, for Crocodile, it wasn't really that long until we got Marineford, and during that time, we can't say he's faster than Zoro, right? Because Crocodile is definitely faster than Zoro or Sanji during that time in Alabasta. And it wasn't long until they got to Thriller Bark, which during that arc, they had the speed fits, especially for Zoro. But, of course, they had the power-ups before that, so it's kind of iffy.
speed because there is virtually nothing that can be used to quantify how fast he is as far as Alabasta goes. Considering the fact that the Straw Hats get stronger after every island they visit, we can make a couple of assumptions. As far as the East Blue Saga, Luffy can react to and hit Kuro, who is faster than the eye can see. At least going by this speed scale from Versus Battle Wiki, that would make him anywhere around subsonic. And SBS states that Kuro
He definitely had like Zoro, right? Or something similar to Zoro. Because in anime, it looked like he was using Zoro way before Zoro was actually introduced in Enies Lobby.
Shakushi is as fast as CP9's Soru. There's two ways of
Oh, it's different. Okay, so it's as fast as Zoro, right? Or something similar.
looking at this. Either you think Oda is referring to the technique's amp in speed, or you think he's referring to the characters themselves.
Wait, what?
To the
So, wait. Then what was the statement then?
two ways of looking at
Ah yes, I got a surprising number of certain Maduan. Katakura's Shakushi Volume 5 was a pretty tough one. To answer this question, see guys, their speed was about the same. But when Katakura uses trick, the speed is so great. Attacking, let's see when I can go. No. The thing is, sure, you may be able to use technique to boost your speed, but to you actually use that, you have to be like similar to that speed to actually reach it, right? Or to do the physical feat, right? So I think Oda was saying that both CP9 and Captain Koro's speed is close, I guess, maybe. Probably not, but their techniques, Soru and Shakushi, M's their speed. I think it's all about M's their speed. And they're saying Captain would definitely win because, trained actual assassins, and he got one shot, and Captain Koro got one shotted by Luffy. But yeah,
At this, either you think Oda is themselves.
it could be both, right? It could be both.
If you
Who
go by
knows?
the first interpretation, then Shakushi is about a 10 times amp like Soru, since Luffy uses Soru when he's using second gear, which is a 10 times amp, and he also states
Yeah,
that CP9 agents kick off the ground 10 times in an instant to pull off this technique. The second interpretation would mean Kuro is beyond massively hypersonic to relativistic, since one can make an argument that One Piece lightspeed meta starts to become apparent around Enies Lobby, but possibly as early as Skypiea,
Yeah.
although I'm going to go with the former interpretation. Under the interpretation that Kuro's pussyfoot maneuver is between Mach 0.1 to Mach 0.9, since Luffy could react to and grab him while he was using Shakushi, he should be anywhere around Mach 1 to Mach 9, or Sonic to low-end hypersonic. This would also be consistent with a later feat in the same arc where Luffy shattered Don Krieg's spear after punching it 5 times mid-explosion. Explosions can be anywhere between 1500 to 3000 meters per second, so this feat would be anywhere between high-end supersonic to hypersonic,
Never even
or
thought
Mach
of that. My God.
5 to Mach 10, and if you want to go with a highball interpretation, then Luffy landed 5 punches as the explosions happened, so his combat speed could be Mach 25 to
That's
Mach
crazy. Punching right when the explosion happens is in 5 times is crazy.
50, but we'll stick with the lower interpretation. In Whiskey Peaks, Zoro is capable of perception blitzing an entire town full of assassins as they stare at him and could
That was a crazy feat, right? So many assassins looking at him straight, and he just disappeared and goes down in a matter of split second.
get between them without anyone noticing. He could blitz their attempt at shooting him while being surrounded, and after having his arm tied with a steel rope, could yoink a grown man to take incoming bullets for him as they were already fired. During the Drum Kingdom arc, Dalton, who had eaten the Bison Zoan Devil Fruit, could move so fast he created after images of himself and moved fast enough that bullets couldn't hit him. The guns that most One Piece characters use are inspired by flintlock pistols and are modified so they can fire more than one bullet at a time. These pistols usually fire projectiles at 305 to 610 meters per second or transonic to supersonic speed, so these feats would be consistent with the Mach 5 to Mach 10 ballpark I mentioned earlier, since they would be faster than these bullets and Dalton is weaker than Luffy. Speaking of Luffy, he can also stretch his arms so fast and so far at this point that they go beyond a 1500 foot tall.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even factor that in, cause this is the mountain, right? This is the mountain, very far up, and then he stretches overpasses the rivers, the whole other towns, and reaches this big part of the town in a matter of seconds. Yeah, Luffy is just a monster at this point.
Mountain they're currently fighting on, and reaching a distance of about 3 towns before Wapol can finish a sentence, which means at this point in the story, Luffy's combat speed is so fast he can stretch his arms a distance of over 4.5 kilometers and then some to hit his opponents before I even finish this sentence. By the time he fights Croco Boy in Alabasta, Crocodile can dodge Luffy's punches, and while Luffy can do the same, Crocodile also doesn't seem to be taking this fight seriously. They fight a total of 3 times, and in every single encounter Luffy does a bit better, with the third fight being his best performance since he can now deal with everything Crocodile hits him with. But how fast is Crocodile? Like I said, there's nothing I can use to possibly quantify how much faster he got if I go by Alabasta alone, but if you use a bit of information from later on in the series, it might be quantifiable. In Enies Lobby, CP9 uses a special technique to determine their Doriki. Doriki measures the physical ability of a combatant, and it doesn't account for special powers like Devil Fruits. The reason why I bring this up is because Luffy fought Blueno and stated himself that he couldn't beat him like this. He needed to use second gear in order to make the fight one-sided. Blueno had a Doriki of 820 and Rob Lucci had 4000. We know it's a linear increase because he said his Doriki is 5 times greater than Fukuro, who had a Doriki of 800. This means Luffy's base became 4.9 times stronger after a single fight, since he later fights Lucci in base and performs relatively well. This is also consistent with the fact that he previously couldn't fight Blueno when they first met and completely matched him after a couple of hours.
When they said each island is stronger, because Luffy got Speed Blitz in Water 7, and right after that he went in his lobby, a new island, and then he just absolutely gets scaled
training
so high.
In between. Under the assumption that Luffy didn't get any stronger or faster across all of East Blue, and he only had 2 major fights, those being Arlong and Wapol, Luffy on a lowball should have gotten 16 times stronger before his first fight with Crocodile. Since Doriki accounts for physical ability and not just strength, this would also mean he got about 16 times faster. This would also be consistent with Zoro's statement that they get stronger after every island. This means on a lowball interpretation of Mach 5 to Mach 10,
going off our earlier interpretation of Mach 5 to Mach 10 during East Blue arc, Luffy by the time he first fights Crocodile should be anywhere around 80 to Mach 100. Crazy.
Luffy, by the time he first fights Crocodile, would be anywhere between Mach 80...
I'm an OP fan who would debate all my life. And even I couldn't come up with all this research.
To Mach 160 or high-end high hypersonic to massively hypersonic. This also wouldn't be an outlandish claim since they would fight Enel, who is literal lightning 1 arc
lightning
later.
Speed.
Now, under this speed scaling, Crocodile should be faster than Gaara by a lot. I'm not really going to go into Crocodile's AP because he only really has one big feat, and that is cleanly slicing through a portion of Alubarna Castle. Gaara's sand is tougher than a wall of tempered steel that's 5mm thick, while hardened, but it could also be blown straight through by Sasuke's Chidori, which can create large holes in stone, it can destroy multiple walls of an inn, and it can easily pierce through...
Crocodile could do the same feat, right? I'm pretty sure he's really strong as well.
A water tank.
Physicality.
Whether or not Crocodile can slice his way through Gaara's sand is kind of irrelevant, because if he gets his hand on Gaara, the fight ends.
Yeah, the fight ends. As I said in the start, once he gets his hands on Gaara, it's already done.
Crocodile's Devil Fruit has the ability to absorb the moisture of whatever it is he is touching, which includes the very ground he stands on. Luffy, who had drunk enough water to bloat his entire body, was sucked dry in an instant. The only reason he survived is because the water he shot up into the air just so happened to fall on him. Against an opponent like Crocodile who can win by simply making physical contact once, I can't really see him winning.
You have to account for his poison as well. He also has poison and a weapon at the same time in this hook. So he has a lot more versatility than Gaara here.
I have a conversation with my chat about the potential
and for like battlefield control
appearance of Shukaku, especially since Gaara doesn't have any sealing jutsu at this point. All in all, you'd have to give Gaara every benefit of doubt and say that he can achieve full host transformation before Crocodile touches him, and even then, Shukaku would have to eventually resort to sealing jutsu once he realizes he can't hurt Croco Boy. He would also have to reach this conclusion before Crocodile reaches Gaara and kills him. Now, moving on to War Arc Gaara versus Marineford Crocodile, I'm just going to give you the quick and easy speed scaling for Gaara. I'll also be giving him every single benefit of doubt, and I'll offer the highest interpretation that I'm personally comfortable with. War Arc Gaara, at least in terms of his sand, should be light speed. Around the time of the 5 Kage Summit, Sasuke Uchiha invades this monumental gathering in order to kill Danzo. The specific feat that at least adheres to the idea that Gaara's sand is possibly light speed is the moment where he fires sand projectiles at Sasuke alongside Tamari, Kankuro, and Daru. The most important attack here is Darui's Laser Circus Jutsu, which according to the data books fires rays of light. Under the assumption that all of Gaara's sand can move at light speed, and not just this one jutsu, we can at the very least say that by the time of the War Arc, his sand is capable of protecting him at the speed of light. I can't give him anything faster just because I have no way of quantifying his speed to be anything higher than this. Now, unlike the previous fight, Gaara actually does have a good way of defeating Crocodile.
Okay.
That being the Grand Sand Mausoleum. I'll go into the
seal,
ceiling jutsu
right?
in a bit, but for now, it is genuinely the only method by which he can deal with Crocodile. One Piece as a series starts to, at the very least, imply a light speed meta by the time we
Yeah, like after Iniesta Lobby or like per early like Skypias here, they already get like so many light speed feats.
fight
It's
NL in
absurd.
Skypiea. Whether
And
or
it
not
gets
the
more absurd later on in the series after time skip.
characters are lightspeed in every regard is up for debate. However, there are two separate statements, one by Nami and the other by Oda himself in an SBS that introduce
What should one do if it'll shut down lightning bolts? First, guard yourself by ducking at light speed and give him maybe a golden right with a bit of rotation. If you can't him, cover your belly button, car and surrender. He's tough.
the idea of
Okay.
lightspeed. Right after Enel, we fight Foxy, who I've already talked about in this channel before,
Yeah.
can generate beams of light and has slowpoke photons
And
that
Luffy was dodging that too.
down everything they touch. Depending on how one chooses to interpret the information that is being presented within the context of the story, there are at the very least 4 points in the story where one can argue that the Straw Hats, or at least Luffy, are definitively lightspeed. Sabaody Archipelago is the farthest point down the timeline where one can argue that Luffy and his crew start to reach lightspeed movement
Yeah.
speed without straight up being disingenuous. The pacifista can shoot beams of light
Like actually showing light speed feats than small crumbs we can work off of.
and we can see Luffy visibly dodging beams of light without even having Haki yet. I'm going to use
Yeah.
this as a baseline because 2 arcs later he runs into Crocodile, who has
Crocodile.
been rotting in Impel Down for a while now. I have no real explanation as to how Crocodile got stronger while in prison other than Oda wanted this to be the case. He's clearly portrayed to be at least relative to Luffy during the escape, and I'm not going to account for Luffy getting stronger between Amazon Lily and Impel Down yet. When the escapees reach Marineford, Crocodile immediately goes for Whitebeard's head.
Yeah,
Luffy
he had beef with that guy.
intercepts and stops him while using second gear, which is a 10 times amp. The anime shows that Crocodile can dodge an attack from second gear Luffy, while the manga shows Luffy blocked his attack. In both instances, one could argue that Crocodile is fast enough at this point that Luffy needs second gear in order to fight him.
Maybe he trained in who knows? Maybe he trained in prison while he was rotting, right?
Although I
Who
would
would
argue
know?
that Croc at the very least had a head start. This is where you either think Crocodile is at the very least light speed or 10 times faster than light. One
If you go by the anime, he was able to dodge a kick from second gear Luffy, which would mean he's at very least 10 times faster than light. The manga doesn't really show this, so at low ball he's at least light speed if you think Luffy only needs second gear to catch up.
Once again, I'm not accounting for Luffy getting stronger between arcs. I think now is a good time for me to talk about the specific interaction of Crocodile's Logia intangibility and the
Yeah.
Grand Sand Mausoleum. I
think it's time. You just say it. Just say the truth that needs to be said.
no idea how this interaction is supposed to go down.
Oh, okay. I'll show you. Gaara Sand passes through. That's it. One touch, dead.
I am not Kishimoto and I am not Oda. There is
Gaara has never fought an opponent like Croc that's due to bottom of sand. I can give you a different answer to it. Not Croc, I can just face out of the Grand Sand. The only people that can say whether or not. But if you go by both verses, right? By Logia definition of meaning, or like example, they can get out of anything rubble, or at least have space to get out of, right? That isn't like a very concealed, no opening type of shit. And this, if this ceiling thing is made of actual sand, it shouldn't be a problem for him to go through the sand, the chakra sand, by turning into sand itself. Because even if they're not the same sand, there still has the embodiment of sand. Therefore, Crocodile could you be able to go through the sand, because they're both sand. Get it?
There's no precedent within the context of either series for how this interaction can go down, since Gaara has never fought an opponent
told you how
who
it went
is
down.
literally natural walking sand as far as I'm aware. If you think Gaara can capture Crocodile within a Grand Sand Mausoleum and Crocodile can't phase out, then Gaara wins. If you think that Crocodile can somehow move his individual grains of sand through a giant pyramid made of compact sand, then Crocodile wins. I also want to make it clear.
Not just say if Gaara could even use the seal against him, if Crocodile is obviously faster, right? So, what's the problem here?
That I can't.
And you have to remember, Crocodile has a lot more advantages when it comes to fighting, because he just control the ground and everything just goes to hell. You can make everything rot. And to say, I guess he can't control because of the rules. He can't control or affect Gaara's sand.
Tell you whether or not Crocodile would have the proper attack potency to bust out of the Grand Sand Mausoleum like Madara did, because his best quantifiable feat is slashing part of a castle.
Now, are we gonna include the feat where he fought Doflamingo? Come on, EON, just say it.
If I have to give you my honest opinion, Gaara should win this interaction. Now I'm gonna try something new. This is where I'm going to split up the video into two different possibilities depending on what information you are willing to accept. If you think Gaara is lightspeed and you think that Crocodile is also lightspeed without accounting for Luffy's potential growth, then the outcome likely comes down to a 50-50. Crocodile just needs to touch Gaara, and Gaara just needs to seal Crocodile, whoever pulls it off.
But what if you encounter all of the abilities in an actual fight, not just them spamming the same move, like able to touch Gaara or sealing? Because they're both smart people, so they wouldn't fall for the tricks that they probably know about on each other. So
first wins, but I'd put my money on Gaara. Moving on to the second possibility, if you think Crocodile is at the very least 10 times faster than Light, he should eventually be capable of making physical contact with Gaara and instantly dehydrating him. We know for a fact that Gaara's sand has a limit to how fast it can protect him. A 10 times difference in speed should be enough for Crocodile to touch him with his sand. I don't see how Gaara catches him with a Grand Sand Mausoleum, and he's less likely to use a sand armor around this point in time. Either way, Crocodile also has a poisonous hook that can melt stones.
Yeah,
so
you actually said it. Oh my goodness.
Likely be helpful in dissolving the sand armor. Also, in case you haven't noticed, I haven't used the Doriki scaling for Crocodile for this latter portion since I don't think it's necessary, but if you were to apply it and lowballed the number of fights Luffy could have gotten stronger from, with Magellan being the only one, that would mean Luffy got a bare minimum of 4 times faster since Sabaody, which would by proxy make Crocodile at bare minimum 4 times faster than Light, and on a highball 40 times faster than Light if you go by Luffy's second gear.
Are we really not gonna count for the Doflamingo feat? Come on, man.
Perception. One last thing I should talk about is Crocodile's fights within Marineford. Listen, I am sure.
Oh my god, you're actually doing it. Wait, come on.
That one could upscale him even further since he fought Doflamingo, Mihawk, and Akainu, but with an asterisk. I think upscaling him would be entirely unquantifiable since he never actually fights them seriously. Whether or not Crocodile is going all out is irrelevant because they...
What happened to you encountered for his sand powers in this fight? You've only been accounting the speed and strength of Gaara's sand. Why aren't you affecting his sand into his powers yet? What does it matter? I'm pretty sure that if you count for him like killing those 2 soldiers about to kill Ace in the Marineford, then he should be able to have speeds closer or relevant to Gaara's sand feats as well.
Going all out. You cannot argue Doflamingo or Mihawk even remotely tried since neither of them used a named attack, and at one point, Dofi even chops off Crocodile's head, and he could have just killed him right there if he had just used Haki. As for Akainu, he caught him off guard. I don't know what else to tell you.
What? Come on. You tell me this admiral wasn't using observation hockey? That's cap. No. Crocodile definitely didn't caught him off guard here.
Akainu suffered no damage and just put himself back together. So there you have it. I think depending on what information you're willing to use, the fight is honestly kind of close since they really only need to hit each other once in order to win. If I had to be honest, the fight can be skewed more towards Gaara's favor if you put them in a desert because he has much better feet.
Are you sure about that? When
it comes to manipulating large quantities of sand, thereby making the Grand Sand Mausoleum an easier win condition. Yes, Crocodile sent a sand tornado across Alabama.
Yeah, you're not even counting his sand abilities yet. What do you mean?
But Gaara could create giant sand tsunamis that even
You're saying Crocodile couldn't do that? Come on.
his father thought were coming from the Shukaku, and he could also stop a meteor with his sand alongside Inoki's help. It's definitely more impressive, at least to me, than sending a single sand tornado that would have finished off an already deserted town. But that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching.
I still think Crocodile wins. Yeah, I said it. I still think he wins. Because EON, you're a very smart person. But I personally still think Crocodile wins. Not because I'm biased. Partially biased, but the reason is that I guess the seal could work on him. To say that Crocodile isn't faster than Gaara, or the fact that he's not smart enough to figure out how to counter him and how to fight him. Because either way, he could just touch Gaara, pause, or slice him with his poison, and that do the trick. If he doesn't have restoration abilities. But overall, I still think Crocodile wins. If you say otherwise, you can find me in the comments. You can find me in the comments. But yeah, thanks for watching, YouTube. I'll be acting to more of these debates. These are fun to do. I like all your supports for me, but yeah, Crocodile wins. So let's be honest. Thanks for watching. Hope subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to see more anime debates content like this in the future. But until next time, I'll see you at the next one. Goodbye.